Here we have a beautiful 94 Kawasaki KX250. The 94 was a particularly good one, but this one's got very leaky forks. It's going to need a new set of fork seals, and I'm going to show you how to install them. And I'm going to point out a few of the key things to look out for while the forks are apart. These forks are upside down cartridge forks with adjustable compression and rebound damping. First, remove the air bleed screw from the fork cap. Now we've got to hold the fork so we can unscrew the cap without damaging the fork tube. I use a set of soft vice jaws for holding the fork, but if you don't have soft jaws to loosen the cap, you can leave the fork in the bike and loosen the top triple clamp and then loosen the cap while it's in place. When it's loose, remove the fork and clamp it in your vise, ensuring it's protected from damage. You can often just undo the cap, but this fork cap has been really over tightened, so I've had to use my impact gun to undo it. Now push the bottom of the fork up and rest it on something like an oil drum or a box. You now need to pull the fork spring down so you can get your spanner in to hold the preload adjuster in place. And with a spanner on the fork cap and holding the preload adjuster still, you should be able to slacken the preload adjuster down slightly and then remove the cap. Now remove the spring and the spring cup from the top. At this point, I'd put the fork cap back on loosely and pour all of the oil out of the fork. There are 2 adjuster rods inside the cartridge which can fall out when you drain the oil. Don't ask me how I know that. Draining oil out of the fork can be a very messy job, and no matter how often I do it, I always manage to make some kind of mess, which always annoys me. You also need to pump the cartridge to try and remove the oil from it during draining. Carefully remove the fork cap and remove the 2 adjuster rods from the cartridge. Now take a 14mm hex bit and use it to undo the compression adjuster at the bottom of the fork leg. If you use an impact gun, usually it'll slacken the compression adjuster without the cartridge spinning inside. Now remove the adjuster and then you can pull the cartridge out of the top. Use a wood chisel to remove the dust seal from the fork tube and then undo the clip which holds the oil seal in. Secure the bottom of the fork leg in your vise and pull swiftly and firmly on the fork tube, and it should come free, leaving in place both the seals and the bushes. Now you need to inspect the Teflon on the bushes and inspect the inside of the fork tube and the stanchion for wear. They're the biggest things to check. Remove the bushes, the spacer and the seals. Now thoroughly clean everything. Put a thin plastic bag over the end of the fork stanchion. This will protect the fork seals from the sharp edges of the bushing recess. Put a little bit of grease or petroleum jelly on the inner sealing surface of the seals. First install the dust seal and then the oil seal. Now you can remove the bag and then install the spacer, the outer bush and then the inner bush. Now install your fork tube upside down in your vise, ensuring it's supported on the bottom. Insert the fork stanchion with the seals on it into the fork tube and use your fork seal driver to drive your oil seal and bushing into place in the fork tube, and now lock them in place with that clip. Now you can push or drive the dust seal into place. They often just push in. Remove the preload adjuster nut and the nylon spacers from the cartridge, and using a cartridge holding tool, slide the cartridge back into place and thread the compression adjuster back in. Tighten it to the correct torque setting. It's important. Use a torque wrench and the cartridge holding tool with a bar to do that. And now replace the nylon spacer and the preload nut just loosely. Now fill the fork assembly almost to the top with the correct 5-weight fork oil and slowly pump the cartridge to expel any air, and then pump the fork tube to refill if necessary. Use the fork level tool to set the oil level to 85 millimeters from the top of the fork while it's collapsed. And reinstall the adjuster rods into the cartridge, keeping the cartridge extended. Reinstall the spring and the spring cap and start to thread the fork cap on until it just touches the top of the spring. Now set the preload adjuster 4mm below where the fork cap currently is and tighten the cap down to the adjuster. That gives you 4mm of preload. Slide the fork tube up to the fork cap and tighten it. Now you've fully rebuilt the fork and you can go ahead and reinstall it into the bike. Don't over tighten the triple clamps. Again, there's a torque setting, and now you can rebuild the other side. Happy days. If you need someone to rebuild or set up your suspension for you on your motocross or enduro bike, give me a shout on 01772 394 150 or email matt@phoenixmotos.com. I'd be happy to help. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe or follow me.